Has the
Thank
host
you.
has stopped it?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
So it's very visible now. If it's fine, when you're ready, please, you can just take it away.
Excuse me. Okay, great. Thank you.
Right.
So hello.
Yes, you're still audible. I
Okay,
can
good.
hear you clearly.
So I thought you wanted to say something. That's why I said hello. All right. So great. Thank you all for being here. I mean, I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to how today goes. I'll also try my best to make sure that we do not waste too much time, and we actually do achieve a lot in this 2 hours. One thing about the energy topic is that it's a very big one. And there's no one day that you can say I can cover everything that is an essential to be, carried out in one training or in one webinar. It needs several times and all of that, but we can actually, if we do pay attention, that we will see that we can actually make a very good use of whatever it is that we've learned today, and then be able to attach it to our body of knowledge that we have. So first of all, we're going to talk about we're going to go and introduce energy and the climate policy. I mean, there's always when you talk about especially global energy situation now, there is no way you cannot tie it to climate change, because one of the major causes of the climate situation that we're having now is the unsustainable way energy has actually been, sourced in the past years. I mean, this was a period where fossil fuel was the key. People who also used coal for their work were like rife at those periods, and as such, and those were the pollutants that actually destroyed our climate, that's making us have the climate change problems that we're currently facing. So there's no way you can divorce energy and a sustainable energy acquisition without discussing climate change. We're going to talk about energy security and 1 minute, please. We're going to talk about energy security and access. We're also going to talk about climate mitigation and adaptation. And then we're going to talk about, international climate negotiations and cooperation and energy and climate policy in Africa. According to Hasey, the goal of this training for you is to help you gain a better understanding of the key issues in energy and climate policy, and to develop the skills needed to effectively engage in policy discussions at the global level. So you're going to understand the issues. You're going to see what the challenges are. You're going to see how does this relate to, global effects, global energy and climate policies. You're going to understand how to carry your own and discuss these issues whenever you find yourself in situations of that. And the good thing about knowing what are even the current situational problem, issues, and knowing how challenges have come up, that's the way you can actually be able to see if in your own mind you can develop a solution to that. And then what are the impacts of energy and climate policies on the low and middle income countries in Africa? And one of the things I always say is that we are at a good place in Africa to actually leapfrog and actually get the right kind of energy in place, because with the kind of deficit that we have in energy prior to now, and the fact that what is the ongoing is clean energy, we are not like the developed countries where they have already polluted their climate with all the energy resource that they have actually sourced, and now they're having to clean up and then go back to getting clean energy. In Africa, we are lucky; we're just trying to get even the energy, so it's a good time to practice energy democracy and be able to be good at the space of getting the right kind of energy at the right kind of space. So distributed renewables, energy sovereignty, and all of that will come into play. And then we'll be able to evaluate the policies that you've learned and the options to address energy and climate challenges in Africa. I would like to pause here a bit and, just ask a little question. If you don't mind, let me just find my questions. So I would like to pause here a bit and ask a question. And this is going to be 1 minute, please. Sorry, we're not all very tech savvy, though I try. I think I should give myself a thumbs up because compared to others, I know I'm doing well. Okay, so I would put a question in the chat box, and I would really appreciate if people can respond in the chat box, and let me know your thoughts. All right. Okay, let's go. It's in the chat box, so if you can see it, kindly go ahead and respond. We have 2 minutes to do that quickly. I'm not seeing responses. Did I put it on the question and answer box or in the chat box? Oh, they said the chat is disabled.
Question and answer box, ma'am.
Okay, for now, you just put it on the Q&A.
All right.
Work on the, yes. So you can just share your responses on the Q&A.
If you've seen the question on the chat, let me know. Do you see the question on the chat? So you respond on the Q&A part.
Yes, let me just take it and put it.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Okay, let's go on.
Two minutes. Just give me the answer. I want to just test how much of what we're going to do is
Please go on.
okay. Answers are coming in. Someone said they can't see the question. Did you see that? Someone said there's nothing on the chat. Showball, can you help me here?
Working on it. It's still
okay. All right. So I'll just continue before they come. Okay. Sorry about that. So no problems. He will sort it out because the thing is I can't see because I'm here as a host. I think I do not see the part where I can actually ask a question myself. I'll have typed the question in here. Okay, I've seen an answer. Thank you very much. Someone said all of the above. As Mary Mburu said, all of the above. People are still saying, I can't see the question. Somebody said the answer is B. So somebody said we can now see the question, so I'm happy about that. Somebody said the answer is D. Somebody said C. Somebody said all of the above. Somebody said all of the above, D, all of the above. Great. So I'm glad. I can see that a lot of my people are up, are up and coming and they understand what is going on. So the question was, which of the following is a primary source of energy? And a lot of people are going for D, but I have a number of people also going for C. And I'll stop here. So, I mean, if you like, you can answer it, but the truth is the answer is actually D, because which of all of them are a source of global greenhouse emissions? I will explain to you why. Transportation, for example, whether it is by sea, by air, by road, we all use fuel. And there's a kind of emission that comes out of, I think that's what they call the exhaust. I mean, have a picture of a ship traveling on the seas. They have this kind of chimney above the above the ship that actually emits kind of smoke. That is the emissions that happens and causes greenhouse gas emissions. Agriculture. Imagine when you're using your tractors to till your soil, you're actually also burning fuel, releasing greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. Most times, especially prior to now that there's a lot of awareness, food loss is a huge problem in agricultural communities because a lot of farmers farm and then they do not have a means of preserving the farm produce. As such, they lose a lot of them. So you can go to a tomato farming community and you see that they have heaped tomatoes that are going to rot. And this as it stays there and is rotting, it secretes a gas that we call methane, which actually emits more emission than the fossil fuel does. So I'm sure a lot of people didn't think agriculture could be a source, and they were like confused. And then industrial processes, of course. Imagine, I mean, there was one day I was passing through Obajana, and I just couldn't imagine what was going on there. And the people who work there and what they must be going through, as there were several chimneys that were billowing dust into, I don't know if it's dust, but some sort of white smoke into the atmosphere. And this is what you see in a lot of industries that manufacture whatever it is. So many industries are manufacturing, emitting gas into the atmosphere and just causing global emissions. So yes, the people who chose D are the winners of this little quiz that we've just gone through. Okay, so let's go on with the class because I see we've taken a bit of time. 1 minute. So we're starting with the energy and climate policy. Excuse me, please. Okay, sorry, I got a bit of a distraction in here. All right, so as we all know, energy is a big problem in Africa. If you look at the easiest way I always tell people to know that energy is a big problem in Africa is when you look at your communities or you think back to your villages. I mean, like I would always say, I remember when I started my work in energy, when people still used to use this kerosene lantern that, the wick is within the small, any bottle can be used. You put a hole in the bottle and then you put a wick into it. And then it's just, you light it with the matches and there's kerosene inside and it's just blowing out dust. I don't know the age range of the people in this community, in this training, but I'm sure if you've been to your grandmother's house in the village, you would have seen that kind of technology because that was one thing that we used a lot of in the north of Nigeria where I live and work. We call it achibalbal, and I know in the south they call it something else. So if you've seen it before, I mean, just throw a thumbs up and then I mean we can go on. So that's, we think, is a source of energy that is good for us because that's our reality. That was what was available. But unfortunately, electricity, which is clean, which is affordable, which is reliable, which is there regularly, is something that over 580 million Africans lack. So we need to find access to energy because it doesn't just give you light in your household. It is also one of the reasons why we can have reduction in poverty, we can have better health, we can have a good education. And I will explain the poverty reduction one because I think a lot of people always find it difficult to relate poverty reduction and energy. Say, for example, an improved cook stove. I remember when we were promoting the improved cook stove when we were doing the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Clean Development Mechanism project. Our cook stove project was the first to be registered as a climate change project. And what were we able to prove? For every cook stove that you use to cook an open fire, you spent about, say, 3 tons of, you emitted about 3 tons of CO2. And this is even averagely, because if you take it as home by home. I know some homes are less, but in northern Nigeria, we have large families because men have up to 4 wives and probably 40, each wife will have like at least 7 children. So we're talking a family of 40 people. So you can imagine the amount of firewood that will be used. When I do presentations to them in communities that time, I just do that calculation and I tell them, in your house, you kill at least 1 tree every week. Think about that. And that's why now we're currently losing 420,000 hectares of woodland every year. So poverty reduction. This wood they use in cooking, they have to buy it. So imagine they are buying $100 of wood per month. Then you now introduce a stove that saves like 80% of the stove. That's the type we're using that time for the project. Saves 80% of the wood that you would normally use on an open fire. So that means instead of spending $100, you're only spending $20. For a household where, sorry?
Actually.
What did she say?
A distraction. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
That was a distraction.
So basically, how it affects poverty is that imagine a household that was struggling, but then they still had to cook and they were spending about $100 per month on firewood. Now they only have to spend $20. What it means is they have a savings of $80 and they could use that for anything, which could also improve their poverty situation as is. Health, I mean, look at all hospitals that are available now. We're doing a project currently with a certain organization called Eki Foundation from Spain in a state in Nigeria. We're going to introduce solar energy to about 35 health centers. What this simply means is these health centers, before this solar energy introduction, never had access to electricity where vaccines could be kept. If somebody needed blood could be saved and all of that. Even during, say, maybe minor operations, there was no lighting. I remember when I had my second son, we had to use solar lanterns because there was no power in the health center. So we had to use solar. Luckily, because of my work, I had solar lanterns with me. And that's what we used to light the place for the nurses to actually help in delivering my son. So you can imagine what that would mean. I remember when we did a project called One Child, One Solar Lantern. And this is because a lot of children, especially in rural communities, go back home and do not have access to do their homework or do anything that, will improve their educational capabilities. But with one solar lantern, one child, we were able to give solar lanterns to one child. And when they get home, it was easier to advance on their education and learn. And imagine, with the way education has gone far now, my children are lucky to be in a school where they can use their tablets and all of that. Imagine a child in a rural community or anywhere that energy is a very scarce commodity and they do not have access to even charge those tablets. That's also a huge problem. How does the energy situation actually improve the gender equality process? Is that women, we used to say, the face of energy poverty. Why? Imagine the situation of cooking. For every 2 hours, anybody faces that kerosene lantern I explained earlier, or a local fireplace. For every time you stayed around it and you inhale the smoke coming out of that technology, you had smoked an equivalent of 1 pack of cigarette. And who does the cooking, especially in our African situations? It is the women. So now by helping them phase out the unclean energy, you're actually improving their health. You're also giving them an idea to see that they can do better with energy. What projects do we do in SOSE, for example, that improve gender equality? We do what we call Powered by SOSE. So we support women in rural communities to own technologies that are powered by renewable energies that they can use to make money. And this also improves their income level, making them have economic empowerment, making them feel better at the community and can speak where their peers are speaking, whether male or female. So as private sector, and this is basically what we do in SOSE, is that we find ways to make sure that energy that is being, that is required to ensure that poverty is reduced, health is improved, education is improved, and there's essential gender equality. How do we ensure that clean energy comes to them? How do we make energy resources affordable with, you know, innovative financing plans and all of that. And that's why we also work with what we call pay-as-you-go when it comes to solar home systems. So we have a technology that is embedded in the solar technology, and we place it in the households. A solar technology that could maybe, I mean, I don't know, across countries, even in Africa, wherever you are in Africa, a $500 solar technology is already expensive for over 50% of the population. So imagine, how would somebody that lives in a village cough up $500 and buy an energy solution? So instead of that, what we do is that we ensure that we bring down we make it affordable by breaking the payments across 3 years, 24 months, 36 months, and all of that. And this allows for people to pay in an easier method. And we can also do it alone. We also have to find financing opportunities out there. So a lot of things are beginning to happen when it comes to financing energy transition, because World Bank, the EU, and a lot of other multilateral organizations are churning out on a daily basis programs that are addressing energy situation and unlocking capital for sustainable energy projects. Going forward, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, excuse me, is a framework that was established I think that was at the Kyoto Protocol or something in Kyoto in 1996, I think. It was established to find a way that we could cooperate between the global south, which is the African countries, and the poor, let me just say the poor countries. Yeah, so it's not just African countries, it's African countries, China, Latin America, the poor parts of the world, and how do we together put our heads together and find mechanisms that can actually help us stabilize the greenhouse gas emissions and, you know, reduce where GHG is concentrated, and actually in new areas ensure that the levels are also you know, reduced. So this is where adaptation and mitigation comes in. How do we adapt where it is already happening? How do we mitigate that it doesn't happen in the other areas where it is just coming up, so that we can reduce the greenhouse gas concentrations and ensure that we prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. The UNFCCC was established, and there's an annual conference of parties that happens every year. They change it every year. It goes to a different country. But the year before, they will announce where it will happen the next year. 2 years ago, it was in Glasgow. Last year, it was in Egypt. This year, it's going to be in the UAE. And this is where, like, there are a lot of meetings and negotiations, and then plans of implementations for all of the climate practices that should happen. Sorry, Kyoto Protocol was actually 97, not 96. So the UNFCCC promulgation was also followed by the Kyoto Protocol, which was signed in 1997 and entered into force in 2005. The protocol, you know, was like the Annex 1 countries will need to fund projects in the Annex 2 countries to ensure that currently, we bring down the gas emissions by below 5.2%, which was what it was in 1990, and bring it down to that point of what it would be as at that 2012. That was when they promulgated the clean development mechanism that I spoke of earlier, that we did our Clean Cook Stove project on. And this allowed, like I said, Annex 1 countries, which are like developed countries that are believed to have been the main cause of the global climate emissions, to invest in projects in developing countries that would reduce climate emissions. So when let me explain it again with a cook stove project, and I'll also explain it with a solar power project, and why you see that the marriage between energy and climate can never be come with a divorce. So the Clean Cook Stove project, like I explained earlier, an open fire would use $100 worth of wood. That's like, let's say, 5 tons of wood per annum. And just by cutting down 5 tons of wood per annum means that when anybody emits greenhouse gases, we no longer had the trees that could absorb this emissions. So because we've cut the trees and cooked with it or done whatever with it, furniture, whatever it is, and all of these processes actually created emissions. And then there are not enough trees to actually suck back in the emissions that had been created. So what this simply brings about is a crazy imbalance, and it means we have to find a way to bring this emission levels down. When you now present a project in preferably developing countries where you bring a cook stove that reduces, instead of cutting down 10 trees, you're not only cutting down 2. It's not the ideal, but it's somewhere, right? So, and it now uses only two trees. It means that there are more trees left behind to absorb whatever emissions these 2 trees would create. And other also emission industries will also have trees that could absorb this. But what this means is this project will actually, instead of spending emitting the emissions that come out of, let's say it's 10 kg of emissions that come out of 10 trees, it means we're only doing 2 kg. So that's bringing down the kind of emissions that will go out into the atmosphere. Then talking about solar and how it also works is, imagine a secondary school, especially in Nigeria, where energy is really a huge problem. A secondary school where they use, let's say, a 50 kVA generator. They buy about 10 gallons of diesel every day to power that generator. Each gallon of diesel emits about 2.7 tons of, kilogram of CO2. That means every day, they are emitting 270 kilograms of CO2 to the atmosphere. And imagine, calculate that in a year. But if I am able to go into that school and I replace that generator with a solar solution, that means zero. We no longer have any emissions going out into the atmosphere. So this was the idea, because we know that it will not be cheap to buy the technology that actually you can put, whether it is the solar panels and the inverters and the batteries. It's not going to be cheap to do that. And the school may not even be able to afford it. Or those improved cook stoves, it's not going to be cheap to put them in those households. And maybe the households cannot even afford it. So the Annex 1 countries are then mandated that for every if I want to do 100,000 cook stoves in, say, one state in Nigeria, they will give me the money to enable me buy the technology and replace it in those households. I hope I am beginning to make sense. And then as we went on, the protocol started seeing, I mean, I remember that time the Kyoto Protocol was still on. We had every year in Cologne, in Germany, the carbon exchange conference that we went for. But with time, the clean energy project started, the country started saying that, no, okay, right now, what we are doing is that we're doing cleaner manufacturing processes. We are no longer emitting gas into the atmosphere because we have changed the way that we used to manufacture. It is now efficient manufacturing that doesn't emit. So as such, I do not have to do any project in the developing countries because I no longer emit as much as I was emitting before. Because as before, for every ton of CO2 they were emitting, they paid an amount of money. That amount of money is now what is used to do those projects in the developing countries. So because they were reducing, it now meant that the cost of the CDM at that time per ton of CO2 was also going down. And before long, I mean, within 5 years, the CDM markets came crashing down. And that protocol was now, the one that I remember when we were developing the Green Climate Fund. We were selected, a number of us, that we sat on the Practitioners Dialogue for Climate Investments, and we were working on the 6 regions of the world where we had like 6 meetings within a 1-year process, and we're the ones that made recommendations into the Green Climate Fund. The Green Climate Fund exists. In fact, they have a meeting in October in Kenya this year, just on the back, leading up to the climate conference in the UAE. The Paris Agreement was well touted because it aimed at limiting global temperatures to rise to well below 2 degrees, because it was realized that even though we're doing all of these projects and doing all of this work and rushing to reduce climate effects, it was not happening. Things were not changing as fast as we wanted it to change. And that's why people like this little girl in Sweden got very famous, because they realized, they said, parents, you're killing our future. We need to leave when you go, because if you continue the way you are, we all know the effects of climate change are flooding, droughts, when you see all of these hurricane this, hurricane that, Katrina, what, All of these are effects of climate change. All the floods that you see happening are effects of climate change. What does that mean? When a flood happens, farming is critically affected, because it means farmlands could be swept away. It meant households could be swept away. I mean, there was a lot happening. And so our targets, we were not meeting it, even in spite of people now turned this whole mechanisms into a money-making venture, more than actually ensuring that the climate levels went down. And so there was a need to actually find out what else could we do. And that was what gave birth to the Paris Agreement. And this one is to ensure that the commitments are not just from the developed countries. What are you as a developing country also doing to ensure that you are reducing or not even creating any greenhouse gas emissions? And that was significant for Africa because it provided a framework for global cooperation. And there was a huge leaning during that climate agreement in 2015. It held in Paris. That's why it is called the Paris Agreement. There was a huge leaning towards adaptation. There was because people were beginning to realize that as much as we thought we were doing to ensure that climate change didn't happen, nothing was really significantly happening. As such, how do we start ensuring that we make people prepared so that adaptation will be easier, especially in African countries? Because even though we only contribute about maybe 5% to the climate effects, we will be hugely affected when climate effects start happening. And so there was a huge need that even we took seriously the climate change transitioning from unclean energies to cleaner ones. There was also another one. There were regional agreements that happened, to ensure that we all had our heads screwed on tight and ensure that we were doing things the right way. So at the time in 2007, Africa and EU partnered on an energy partnership to ensure that there was sustainable energy development in Africa through the collaboration between the EU and the African countries. And this kind of collaboration gave birth to programs like the Nigerian Energy Support Program. There was some other one by Cofidis. It was a Spanish one. So the EU, working with its own countries, tried to see that they did projects in Africa. There was the EDP, which is also Portugal, and they were doing projects in Africa to ensure let's have much more sustainable energy adoption, and that will reduce dependence on sustainable energy solutions. So, for example, let me give you a good example of what the kind of things that could happen. Currently, Nigeria gets about 13.2 gigawatts of its energy from generators. Do you know what that means when it comes to the emissions those generators are emitting on a daily basis? That is like hundreds of thousands of tons of CO2 going out into the atmosphere every day. So the aim now for a lot of private sector partnership is to see that how do we replace most of these generators with renewable energy. I mean, and I don't want to limit myself to solar. There are possibilities even in the wind space, in the bioenergy space, small bioenergy space, small hydro and all of that. So there are things that we can do. So most of that project that the Africa-EU partnership gave birth to, like I said, the Nigerian Energy Support Program, the Cofidis program, the EDP and all of that. And then there was also another one called the African Renewable Energy Initiative, which was aiming at 10 gigawatts of new renewable energy capacity. Fortunately, this was born during COVID year, right? So it was really very interesting because I remember I was part of this program as well. I was really hoping that our organization could do projects that could respond to this. But you know how our African communities can be. We have all the fantastic plannings. We have all the fantastic, policies, documentations, and all of that. But the thing is the following up and ensuring that it is well implemented and it actually meets the targets that it should meet. Not just, I think we have a problem with just making sure we tick the boxes. We should not, we are at the point now in Africa that we should stop ticking boxes and actually see that it happens. And it is behoving on the youth of this continent to ensure that this happens. So Array, for me, was supposed to be a partnership between the AU and the African Development Bank and the UNDP. And up till now, I am still not seeing that they are getting to their 10 gigawatts plan. But let's see, they still have another 7 years to ensure this happens. Then there was in 2021, another one was born, which was called the Africa Green Stimulus program. It was to mobilize about $100 billion in public and private investment in renewable energy and energy efficiency and other low carbon sectors across Africa. That one, luckily, is just 2 years old. As at the last time I checked, they had grown in their investments. I think they are up to about 30 billion now. I hope, fingers crossed, I'm saying the truth, but I've not actually been paying attention to that program. But I'm hoping that they are where they want to be, and they are also able to do the investments that they had planned to do. Should we take, I'm looking at my time and it's already 11:50. Should we take a 5-minute walk around break, take a drink? Let me take a sip of my coffee and then we continue. Shobo, does that work?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of what has been said heavy stuff. I mean, people here are really, really enjoying the session. So we'll return in 4 or 5 minutes.
Thank
Good.
you.
It's good.
I'll use the time to just go through the questions in the chat box. I'm sorry, in the question and answer.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I see there are like 40 comments, and I understand why you closed the comment box. So
Exactly.
maybe you need to shut it down again. I'll just concentrate on the Q&A. All right.
I'll look through the chats for any questions.
Important, yeah. All right then. Meanwhile, okay. It's alive.
Yeah, no worries. So after each class, the slides will be shared on the group. So rest assured on that. And also you'd have the recording for each of the classes. But meanwhile, if you have questions, you can just drop it in the Q&A feature there. You can keep dropping them in the Q&A. I have 2 questions already.
Okay, great. All right, so what I will do is I'll wait till I finish the presentation, then I'll take the questions, because I don't want us to miss out on anything that's on the slides. And I'll take the questions, and where I can't take all of the questions at the end of the training, I can also email the answers, and since it's a class, I mean, you can share it with them.
Yes, perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, somebody asks why only women. Okay, I'll leave that. Okay, I think I can even be typing the answers already. Not only women are given priority, women are encouraged to take decision.
Yeah, I saw the question on why only women are given opportunity in renewable energy initiatives, work like that. And I've found, I mean, so many of such questions and comments. Yeah, for obvious reasons, right? And
don't worry, I'm already responding.
Yes, okay.
I'm responding to one of the questions, so they will see it when they come back.
All right. So quick one. Aviva. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I'll suggest that we just go on with
All
the
right.
session, so
All right.
that
Yep. Okay.
the
So now
extra
on to
time.
module 2. Yeah. So please, I would really, really like if you can close the chat box. It's very distracting.
Okay.
Yes, please do close the chat box again. I
Okay.
now understand why you did it in the first place. I won't ask
Okay.
questions there anymore. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
energy access challenges in Africa. I mean, more than 80% of us lack access to reliable, sustainable, and affordable energy solutions. And about 80% of us rely on traditional biomass for cooking, heating, lighting, and all of that. And this is where the problem for us in Africa actually emanates. And the reason why I think most of the protocols and most of the agreements have actually focused on ensuring that any projects are actually, any climate reduction, gas reduction projects are actually held in Africa, because we already have spent a lot of time using the wrong kind of energy. And this is why in the beginning I said we're at a good place in Africa to ensure we leapfrog. We do not have to go to, say, for example, coal, and then we are now trying to work like in Germany, for example. A lot of coal plants are being shut down because they've created a lot of emissions. They've caused health challenges and all of that. So we don't have to go from where we are now to coal and then now come and shut down, spend all that money doing coal and then shut down all those coal plants. No, we can just take our money or take the money that we're getting and quickly run to renewable energies immediately. So what are the reasons why we are having issues to access energy in Africa? The infrastructure for energy is really, really low. I'll speak about this from a Nigerian point of view. Currently, the energy resource, the main energy resource for Nigeria is the Kainji Dam, and there's a need to transmit the energy across kilometers to get it to where everybody needs this. And I think the transmission is also in Oshobo. The generation is in Kainji, sorry. The transmission is from Oshobo. So it's like a lot of infrastructure to make sure energy gets to where it is. Some communities we have found, you find pole lines and energy infrastructure passing, distribution infrastructure passing through, but there's no energy in it. And when you talk to the community people, I remember a very funny community. We said, but you have pole lines. I said that one is, we use it to hang clothes to dry. It's funny, but it is what it is, right? And they said ever since those poles had been planted, energy had not passed through it. So the high cost of deploying energy through an unsustainable transmission grid is also a waste. So that's why we believe in renewable energies, that distributed renewables are the quick wins. In Nigeria, for example, like I said, another thing that we have noticed is that the high cost of electricity is blamed on the low financial investment in the power sector. But unfortunately, that's one of the things I always say may be a lie, because most banks will tell you the reason why they do not lend money to energy companies is because in the past, most energy companies are the reason why they are going under, because they collected money to do projects in energy and that didn't see the light of day. Then inefficient generation, like I said, not enough generation, or when it's generated, the inefficient transmission, and then the distribution systems are all crazy, and then huge theft and corruption. People will just come one day from one village to the next, they roll up the wire and they go sell it for whatever it is they want to sell it for. So another reason is that we have low electrification rates because the high cost of building, the maintaining the grids is also there. I already mentioned this. And then traditional fuels are easy to get, even though they have an adverse environmental effect. They are easy, they are fast, they are cheap, and it's just like our go-to. That's why you find that a lot of people just rely on them. What are the kind of solutions that we can do using Africa to cross this divide of our major energy poverty? We can invest in off-grid solutions. That's why I said distributed renewable energies. So now, one of the big programs that's happening in Nigeria and making a lot of waves is the Nigerian Electrification Project, where there are two facets to it: the output-based fund, where you have private sector being encouraged to deploy solar home systems in communities and as fast as possible in tens of thousands of numbers, because for every solar home system you deploy, you get about 15 to 25% of a subsidy for doing that. So you have to register on the program, get accepted on the program as a vendor, and then you're encouraged to deploy. And at a point, the subsidy actually rose up to 40%, but now it's coming down because the program is ending in October. Then on the other hand, there was the performance-based grant also under the NEP. And the performance-based grant encouraged private sector to develop mini-grid solutions of a minimum of 1,000 connections per community. And for every connection that was household or whatever, connections meant household, excuse me, commercial, public, or even productive use of energy. So for every connection you were able to make, you got, when the program started, it was $350 per connection. And with time, it rose to $600. Though now we see that they are renegotiating. Like I said, the program is ending in October. So there's a renegotiation now. And even though they extended it by 9 months to clean up all the other things that were supposed to have been done, I think they will reduce it to about $450 now. I mean, don't quote me. They are still talking about what it's going to be. So these are the kind of innovative financing mechanisms. I'm also thinking about, for example, one of the things we're trying to do is there's a certain company that uses all of their plants are powered by generators. So we're in talks with them to replace all of that with solar power. And because of that, we're able to register it on the DRECs, the Distributed Renewable Energy Certificates. Is a kind of certificate that ensures that you're claiming that you are able to make these reductions happen, and those certificates you can sell to carbon finance companies, and you get like money back for doing that job. I talked about already pay-as-you-go systems, and then the mini grids are now powering productive use of energy technology. So one of the communities, for example, that we're deploying a solar powered mini grid, they are a huge peanuts and yam and all kinds of crops that are mainly harvested during the rainy season. And the problem with that is when you harvest during the rainy season, you cannot preserve, because normally their traditional ways of drying is to dry on the roadside, and the rains will not allow the farm produce to dry as should be. So it's like double jeopardy, right? So what we are doing is, after building the mini grid, we are like a customer to our mini grid by deploying solar powered dryers that are up to 15 tons. So these people in the communities can actually come in and dry their crops as fast as possible, and preserve it as will be good for them. And then there's growth in the economy. And so there are so many innovative solutions that have come across because of the kind of energy situation that we already have in Africa. So there are different kinds of, I've been talking a lot about solar energy. That's because with the kind of location that Africa is in, solar energy we're close to the equator. So solar energy is like the easiest for us to harness in all of the sources that renewable energy has. So we receive an enormous amount of sunshine every year. And yeah, like I said, it's just ideal for solar energy production. And I don't know if some of you have heard of the Desertec, Operation Desertec. This is an idea that at a point, I don't know if it's been born now, but it was really like a very nice idea some 10 years ago, where the desert was supposed to be used to lay down panels upon panel, rows of hundreds of thousands of panels, and generate energy that can actually be transported to Europe, because they didn't have as much energy. This was at the period that they were locking down most of the coal-powered plants. That we are rich in renewable energy, in solar energy, doesn't mean we have zero wind energy. And Kenya can tell you that, because they have gone very far in. I'm very proud when I'm flying down Kenya and I just see the solar windmills flying. It reminds me that, oh, we're doing what Europeans are doing, right? And we're trying to, also fight this menace by ourselves in our own way, in our communities. I always say Africa has a huge coastline, and if our governments were serious by planting wind energy wind veins across this coastlines, we could actually generate enough energy to bring back into the continent and use, and we will not be called the dark continent that we're being currently called. What is happening in the Netherlands? Recently, I was in Haarlem, and we went to the beach, and I just looked out at the sea. Every space on the sea was taken over by wind veins. And this is easy for us to do as well. So our vast coastline can be used for this. Like I said, Kenya is doing that well, and even South Africa, yes. And they shared here, it's shared here that Egypt and Morocco are also buying into it. But for me, I've been to Kenya and I've seen it, and I really feel very proud of that happening. And you know, each wind vein can actually give as much as, I mean, the minimum of it can give you 1 megawatt of energy. So that's a quick win, if you ask me, to ensure that we have energy access quickly. Another one is the hydro energy. Currently in Nigeria, we're using the River Niger, the River Niger and River Benue and damming them. And that's why we have the Shiroro dams, we have the Kainji dams, and that's where we are generating some sort of hydro energy that, in fact, is one of the mainstays of Nigerian energy resource. And I can see here that the Nile, the Congo, Zambezi also are providing that kind of energy access to the countries that they also border. Ethiopia, Ghana, and Zambia have made significant investments in hydro energy in recent years. And I know that Ethiopia is really running fast because, you know, Ethiopia has seemed like one kind of closeted community country for a very long time. But all of a sudden they are awake, they are doing work, they are trying to be one of the largest providers and, you know, producers of their own energy and use their own energy as well. There's a lot of programs happening that are coming out of Ethiopia that really makes my heart, you know, delights my heart. Then geothermal energy, another source of energy that really, really, for me, I think we're not even taking advantage of. There's somewhere in Nigeria, and there are several places like that in Nigeria. And it is quite exciting that we even have that kind of opportunities, and we're not just taking charge of it. There's somewhere in Nigeria called the Ikogosi waterfall. Ikogosi, I know it's Ikogosi something. I mean, it's like the water comes out of the rock. But the funny thing is, one part of the water is cold and the other part is warm.
It's a warm spring.
Sorry, that's the word I lost, the spring, the Ikogosi warm spring. So one part of the water is cold, the other part is warm, and then they meet at a point and they mix, yeah? And one thing that I just thought about, and I was talking to the manager when we went there with the kids, was this is a very interesting geothermal source here. You just need to go deep and find out where the heat of the hot water is coming. No one is boiling it, it's just coming from nature. And then you dig deeply and you find the source and you can connect energy from there. And he said, yes, some company came to do some feasibility study and they are now like proposing it. But you could see that there was not a huge interest in what I was talking about. And now you can see across the continent, like they said in East African Rift Valley, that's one huge potential that than you can ever imagine. Kenya and Ethiopia are now, like, you know, putting investments in and trying to see how they can make this happen in a quicker way. And the Olkaria geothermal power plant is one of the largest geothermal power plants in Africa. And I see in Nigeria as well, because I also know there's somewhere like that in Cross River State as well. It's not just the one in Ikogosi that we can actually tap into, and I'm very certain state. And around there, all the communities do not have access to they have access to the global grid, the national grid, but the truth is that they don't have reliable energy supply. So I can imagine if somebody goes and explores that power solution and then, you know, pours it out, almost half of that region will be powered easily. And that's like investment for the private sector. So for those people who are involved in that kind of depth of energy, they could actually look at it. Role of international institutions, they've been the ones that actually have even brought energy to come to where it currently is. UNDP, I remember in 2012, they did a program in Nigeria called the ATRE, which was Access to Renewable Energy Program. And UNDP in Nigeria works out of 11 states. And there was a competition, they called the ATRE, and companies applied to it with their proposals or concept notes of what they want to do when it comes to energy. And so say actually we also partook in that program, and we won for one of the states, which was Niger State. And so you can imagine, even in 2012, a UNDP had already started working on how to ensure we have better energy. I know I also worked with them on the Sustainable Fuel Wood Management Program. I also worked with them on the small grants program for global energy facilities, also housed under the UNDP. So UNDP is one program that has actually been doing a lot of work when it comes to energy across the continent. The World Bank, I just shared with you earlier that they also did work with NEP. They are also the ones that are the custodians of the SE for All, United Universal Energy Facility, and they invest in that, though it's an SE for All program. Then IRENA, oh my God, IRENA is one of the best. I mean, in 2011, they did a program called Prosper Africa, which was promoting solar PV entrepreneurship. And I was Sose was one of the beneficiaries of that program, I remember. And we were taken to everywhere there was renewable energy already succeeding, to ensure that we got the training and knew how to make entrepreneurship in renewable energies happen in Nigeria very well. And they do every year a general assembly in renewable energies to talk about, and every state is a member state. When I say state, I mean country, is a main member state of that agency. They are based in Abu Dhabi, though one of their main offices is also in Germany, in Bonn. So they do a lot of work when it comes to promoting access to renewable energies. They also, after Prosper, they went on to another one. They worked with a Creon called Solar Energy Facility, and that was also a big one. AFDB is now putting funds. They are also partnering with World Bank in the Nigerian Energy Electrification Project, and excuse me, there's also the Productive Use of Energy project in Nigeria that AFDB is the one also funding. And then the IEA also is doing a lot of work. So they've all have roles that they play in ensuring energy access, especially across the global south. I mean, developing countries like
So there must be network thing. You just exercise a little bit of patience.
We'll just continue, and have done a bit of time. At this point, questions that can aid this discussion, would you like to ask? I will give 2 minutes for that. I'm looking at the Q&A as soon as it increases.
Also suggest, should we give someone perhaps an opportunity to ask a question live?
Exactly, please. Let's do that, because I feel like a robot just going on and on. I'll mute myself. If you do have a burning question, please raise your hand, and then we will unmute you to talk.
Okay. So let's see. So if you do have a question, if you don't have a question, you can just lower your hand.
I can see 8 hands up.
Yes. So
sorry, 8, not 80.
Oh, okay.
Let's just take 2 so that we don't. Yeah.
Okay. So let me allow Emen Gilde.
Hemen Gilde Undimwana.
Okay.
I hope I tried.
Okay. So the person has lowered their hand. Okay, so the next person. Uwayezu, okay. Uwayezu, you're
kindly
live.
Unmute yourself.
Uwayezu, you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Okay. If Uezu is not on, let's move to David. Okay. So David, you can unmute your mic to ask your
David
question.
Oyo. I see you've given them access to unmuting, but they need to unmute themselves.
Yes. Hello, David. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Strange. Okay, let's go to Caroline so we can continue. If Caroline doesn't work, we'll just leave the rest and try later. Yeah, Caroline,
yeah,
unmuted.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I wanted to know, now that cows produce, cow dung produce methane, and biogas is one of the energies that over a period of time I've always believed biogas is one of the renewable energies. What's the relationship between the production of methane and the safety of the biogas
Hello, Caroline.
You're breaking up badly, but I think I get her question.
Okay.
From the first statement she made, I can tell what her confusion is. I think she's basically saying that on one hand, we're saying cow dung is producing methane, and on the other hand, it is also biogas that we can use, like it's a renewable energy. So, I'm thinking that her confusion is, okay, why would you say something on one hand is bad, and then on the other hand, it's good again? So I think that's where I am suspecting that's where her question is. I remember when I was studying in the Netherlands, one of the things that they did teach us was how to sustainably capture methane. And if you capture methane sustainably, it is actually a very good energy source. So it's like gas now in Nigeria, where there's a lot of gas flaring and all of that. But if it is captured and treated well, this can also be a good renewable energy resource. So it is not the availability of these resources that are the problem. It is the sustainable use of it. So because water floods, does it mean that water is not a good source of energy? It is, right? As much as these seas are a risk and can actually cause hurricanes and all of that, the thing is, the movement of the waves also creates tidal energy, right? So there's also a benefit to it. Yeah, cow dung produces methane if you leave it, like maybe pack it in one place and do not sustainably harness it, like cover. There's a way you can cover it. There's this permeable material. I remember when we went to that site in the Netherlands that's used when they gathered everything in one spot. That material was used to cover it, and then there was a little like a hole where all the gas that was coming out of that covering was harnessed and captured and treated and used. So, but unlike here where we will use it directly, they will pump it back into the grid. So I hope this helps answer your confusion. So mitigation options.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline. So mitigation options and policies, improving energy efficiency. So for example, South Africa Implementing Agency has done labeling of appliances. And there was one time in Nigeria, we did a program called PRIN, Promoting Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency in Nigeria. And that program was funded by IRENA. So you see, when I say IRENA has done a lot of good things, it was an IRENA and UNDP thing, I remember very well. And it was championed by EEC, a certain organization called CREEC or something. And this was in between 2014-ish and 2017. I've grown old, so some of these things I've forgotten them. Yeah, but this program helped to make us realize what energy efficiency is. I think it was through that program, because they did a lot of work in Nigeria, that a lot of Nigerians now realize that the incandescent bulbs and the CFL bulbs had a difference, right? And they realized that there were LED bulbs, and the introduction of LED, CFL, and all of that happened during this period. That was when we're promoting the use of energy efficiency bulbs instead of using the 60 watt, because growing up, every household used the 60 watt blaring yellow bulb in their homes, or the tube lights that took all of the energy. In fact, the energy it was taking, you could hear the light doing zzz, I remember very well. And so each of those lights could take averagely 80 watts at a time. An 80 watts DC solution can actually give you 5 points of lighting, power a DC TV, and power 2 DC fans. So imagine the energy waste we were doing. So, but with time, that program was able to ensure that most of the incandescent bulbs were replaced by these efficient ones. And then they started talking about the labeling of electricity appliances. And that's when, if you notice in the market, people started talking of ACs that have inverter ACs, no inverter fridge. No, it's not as if it is carrying an inverter. It is just that it is not energy efficient. So it is low on the demand it has for energy, such that to the point that you could actually use an inverter and power it. And so a lot of those labeling just didn't happen in South Africa. I'm just giving you, like, back home, even in Nigeria, we started working with Sun to develop standards that ensure that most of the electrical appliances that came into Nigeria had that labeling. I'm sure a lot of you see the label of where there's a rating of A, B, C, D, E, and it goes from green to yellow or red. So then you know how much energy efficient the appliance you're having is. The policy has saved over 6.2 terawatt hours of energy since 2013. Can you imagine? That was a very successful program, if you ask me. Excuse me. Then mitigation options and policies. So using policies such as carbon pricing, which internalize the cost of GHG emissions into the market, like I explained about the DREX, for example. So if I'm doing a project that's going to phase out, say in a big estate of 300 households, and then I go in, and they were currently using maybe 1 megawatts power generator, and I'm able to replace those generators with solar power. That means I've saved us, like, I don't even know if I have to start calculating the amount of CO2, CO2 that has been captured, phased out due to this. So this is commodity that you can actually sell, and to a carbon finance organization like the South Poles, the Impact Carbons. These are companies that actually trade carbon. So the South Africa also has a carbon tax that they introduced in 2019, which applies to direct emissions from stationary combustion sources and indirect emissions from consumption of electricity, fuel, and other taxable activities. And then, if you know, I don't know, most of you, if you buy your flight tickets yourself, you get to a point at the flight ticket where they ask you, do you want to offset your emissions? Because for you to fly, that plane is actually doing a huge amount of emissions. Like I explained with the ship earlier, planes also, in fact, the plane's one is a lot worse, and because it's closer up there, it actually does more damage. I remember one day I was standing in Frankfurt Airport, near Frankfurt, and I looked up and I saw smokes, like, all billowing from planes, like 20 planes coming towards Frankfurt Airport at the same time. And I just could imagine the amount of emissions that meant. So when you pay this offset amount, it is captured and then used to do projects like the one I explained about the estates or the companies or the cook stove projects in Global South. And then promoting public transportation, sustainable public transportation. Currently, last month, Sterling Bank opened a certain station called the Core. Core is like an electric. It's like a filling station, but for electric vehicles. And what this is meaning is we're going to start seeing the adoption of electric vehicles more in Nigeria, because people are beginning to understand that electricity is an easier fuel to change to, and for your vehicles. Nigeria recently, within 3 months, our fuel costs, I always used to have Nigerians, make fun of Nigerians before that. We really had it easy. We had one of the cheapest fuel costs in the world, because we're buying fuel at what? 40 cents to the dollar or something like that. And even in Europe, petrol was 1.2 euros, €1.20. So with this increase now, we have come up to the level of currently, if I use the current exchange rate, it's still about, let's say, 90 cents. It's not yet a euro yet. So it's still reasonable, but we have so much in the past taken energy for granted. We keep thinking it's a cheap commodity in this country because it's been subsidized for us a lot. So as soon as the subsidy was removed, the reality hit us, and it made fuel rise for about, up now it's about 500% increase in fuel in Nigeria. And the Lagos bus rapid system we simply call it BRT, are buses that were laid out in Lagos to ease transportation, because Lagos has a huge amount of commuters every day. And now I hear that the government is trying to change all those buses to electrically powered buses. That's why organizations like the Sterling Bank and others are creating solar powered charging stations where people can go charge. Another thing that is also happening in Nigeria is a lot of mini grid developers. We are now being charged that in communities where we work, where they use a lot of bikes. I don't know what you call it in your countries. Some people call it Boda. We call it Okada, and all of that. So when we can change those technologies to electric ones, then they can actually be charging at our mini grid sites, and then they will be working for people. And what does that simply mean? You phase out the whole of the emissions that the petrol or diesel will have been creating. There are also other adaptation and climate adaptation and policies and strategies that have been created, like the one by African Union adaptation program, which was done in 2007. It was set up to promulgate adaptation efforts in countries like Kenya, Mali, Mozambique, and Sudan. And I hear that these were successful to a certain extent. The ADB also has a climate change action plan, which it developed in 2016, and it is supporting a climate smart agriculture. And that is why I think it has gone beyond Zambia and Morocco now. And that is why they also have one in Nigeria that they are currently actively funding, called the productive use of energy mechanism that is in place. A lot of times we sit down where we are in our ACD offices, our climate change meetings, and we think we're doing policies and strategies that are going to help people, but we do not talk to the people. And I remember every time I go into these discussions, I say, how do we get that woman who is selling mangoes in our community also involved in climate change adaptation strategies? This is only when it happens to her that we will then start running around and saying, oh, we lost 500 people. If the people themselves do not take ownership, feel democracy enough to know that I am also responsible for the rising sea levels, I'm responsible for that. The reason why the rains didn't come this year is because there was something that I did that contributed. And if I can change that to this, then that is going to help me in the future. Then we're not doing anything. And that's why at SOSE, as much as we're an energy company, we also preach climate smart agriculture to our community people. And that's one of the things that we do, that we're already doing to address that from the grassroots. Another thing that we're currently doing with support from the EU is a project called the Agri-D, accelerating the green innovation and digital innovation in agricultural practices. So what are we doing? We're helping, most times people travel long distances to process farm produce, or to even just carry it around and all of that. So we're seeing that we're mapping out, we're using a digital tool to map out what are the current issues, what are the solutions that are possible, and then we'll pilot a few solutions and see how we move on from there. So now there are other urban adaptation strategies, like improving the drainage systems. There's a new drainage system that somebody was talking about, where you can actually, you don't need as much space as we used to use before, just a little space, and it could also be easily turned into a biogas system that can actually power the house to cook. Yes, you're going to suffer a bit of smell, but it's better than that going into our waters and all of that. Again, building green roofs, of course, it means that you can also, I remember in the Netherlands, in a certain city called Hengelo, most of the houses had plants on the roof. They said it helped to retain water, and during winter, the house was not as cold, so they spent less on the energy for heating. So there's a lot of things we can do. Now there's a lot of new houses coming up in Europe that they are using a certain way to build it to reduce the amount of energy that they will need, because they no longer use much of brick and mortar to build. They build these houses that have a lot of insulation and glass use. And so if you were spending $500 per month during winter to warm your house, you didn't need to spend as much. You spent maybe about $100. But what it also meant is that you're not just saving the money, you're also saving the emissions that would have been cost if you were protecting your house that much. So all of these adaptation strategies are already happening. In Dar es Salaam, the government has developed a flood management program, which involves building and upgrading drainage infrastructure. And I see it also happening in Nigeria. I was speaking to a friend in Bielsa today. Last year, they had one of the worst floods that happened. But already this year, people are already they even had schools shut down so that they could actually do a lot of adaptation strategies in case the flood came. So now we're not waiting. We're no longer waiting for floods to happen. We're actually sorting it out before it does happen. And then when we talk about international climate negotiations and cooperations, we spoke a bit about some earlier when we talked about the climate, the others like the climate diplomacy and advocacy strategies. There are alliances that are formed to strengthen African countries, so that when you are negotiating with other countries, you come from a position of strength, and this enables you to push for, climate agreements that are favoring you as a country, unlike just ticking the boxes and just collecting any amount of money so that you can just share amongst yourself. No, we are actually now making sure that whatever is coming in is actually done and used for the right kind of strategies to help us. And these are championed by groups like the African Group of Negotiators, which was formed to represent African countries in climate negotiations. And this group advocates for common positions and strategies, and this benefits African countries and pushes for climate finance, technology transfer, and capacity building. Climate diplomacy and advocacy strategies, like the international partnerships with major emitters and donor countries. Like I shared earlier, the Annex 1 countries funding projects in developing countries. So countries such as Morocco and Ethiopia have strengthened their partnerships with China to access clean energy and climate finance. And then there's a huge need to have an already ongoing advocacy happening that is raising awareness about climate change. And I think I see it working. I remember 12 years ago when we were still trying to make people understand. People look at you like, what are you talking about when you talk about climate change? And it became a thing of pride for me that there was now a house award for climate change, which is Chanjen. Yeah, it sounds like English, but it makes me very happy that if there's a house award for it, if your language can have a word for it, it means it's beginning to trickle down, right? So that's what makes me happy. And a lot of organizations are working like ours with communities and then finding solutions from government, marrying it and developing projects in the communities that ensure that people are more climate resilient. Development is happening as well as you're doing that. And there are youth-led movements. I know about AYICC and a lot more. There's another one that I know is PACC, Pan-Africa Climate Change something. So there's a lot of organizations that are holding this kind of climate actions and making sure that they are talking to governments and challenging them to live out their commitments to climate change in their countries. So what are the opportunities for renewable energy in Africa? There's a lot of opportunities. It creates businesses I remember when I started about 15 years ago, I was the first female-owned business in renewable energy. I am very sure of West Africa. I don't know if in Africa, across Africa, others had it, but I know that in 2009, when I set up, it was the first official, really registered business. But now there are at least in Nigeria, there's 20 more that have come up. And I remember I was working with women to help develop their capacities, build more women entrepreneurs and all of that. But now we have that. But what is this meaning? Now I look across roofs and I see a lot of solar panels coming up. There's more creation because those panels had to be manufactured somewhere. Those panels had to be installed by people. Maintenance of that panels has to happen. I remember I was training a group of people on ETC about job creation in renewable energies. And I was talking about how you could just set up your company, even if you do not have the capital to be buying the solar panels and installing. You could just be an installer and maintainer. So you can share your cards that, oh, for your panels to work, you can be a cleaner of the panels and making sure that much more energy is being generated and deployed to your household. And another opportunity for renewable energy is that there's a lot more energy access. I mean, the more we are doing off-grid renewables, meaning that more communities are becoming powered and less communities are not powered. So that's reducing the energy poverty and, in fact, economic poverty of people across the continent. And then we are mitigating climate change because by the time think about most of the fireplaces are now replaced by, say, if it's a community where they have a mini grid powered there, and we can help them to get access to induction cookers where they don't have to use any firewood at all. I mean, imagine what that switch would mean when it comes to climate greenhouse gas reduction in the community. So there's a lot to gain in the opportunities that are there for the renewable energies. So we have recommendations for policies and regulations and for renewable energy in Africa. And these are enabling policies and regulations. These policies should include incentives for renewable energy deployment, so that feed-in tariffs. I am a bit antsy about feed-in tariffs. Yeah, feed-in tariffs may work in some African countries that have a very good grid that are working. So yes, you can feed in energy to the grid, and then whatever you get from the grid is actually subsidized for you because you are feeding energy into the grid. Or there's a check and balance that's done at the end of every payment period, where if you put in 100 kilowatts and you used 50 kilowatts, the government is inclined to pay you for those 50 kilowatts that you generated and put into the grid. That's what feed-in tariffs are. And tax incentives. For every organization or manufacturing company that is reducing its own emissions by including renewable energy in its activities, then they should be given some sort of tax incentives just to encourage them and maybe even give them subsidies. So I know that with the SunRef program, there's something like that in Nigeria. And then there should be innovative financing mechanisms. We've spoken so much about innovative financing mechanisms, and there are a lot of them out there, honestly. There's a need to actually water some of them down. I was having a conversation with a friend who is handling the PSIA at the Green Climate Fund, and I told him, this PSIA is like a long process, right? To get access to the funding in the long run. He said, yes, that he doesn't understand. And that's one of the things that they are trying to work on in GCF to ensure that they see how, you said it's a private sector thing, right? But then private sector cannot even come in, apply for this mechanism and get it within 3 months. It takes years, it takes 18 months and all of that. How do we water down all of these solutions and mechanisms so that it is easier for people to just walk in and get it? So those for me are when they say innovative, the funds are there, but the mechanisms have to be simplified. Already it's too much trouble to go across to them. And then the grid integration. I love this idea. The thing is, we do not have to reinvent the wheel, right? There's one program that also is under the Nigerian Energy Support Program called the IMAS. IMAS is Interconnected Mini Grid Acceleration Scheme. So what the EU did was they gave developers who won, like our company, funding to do the distribution assets that were already existing that was powered by the distribution companies. So they cleaned that up for us, put the new ones, the high level ones. And our work as developers is to raise financing that would generate energy. So the community we are working, for example, they currently said they have sometimes 4 hours of energy every week. So what we will, and the grid is available there, but the grid is broken down. So the GIZ infrastructure, I mean, sorry, the EU infrastructure is going to help us ensure that the grid is brought up to an optimal level such that we can now generate energy, enter into a partnership with Kaduna Disco, which is the disco operating in that region, sign a tripartite agreement, which we have already signed. And we're the ones, you know, whatever energy they send to us, we pay them for it. And then we send that out with the one we generated closer to the community. So we don't have a need for all of those wires coming from Kainji or Shobo or whatever it is, thousands of kilometers away. We're generating it within the community, sending it out to the community. And people, most of these homes were not metered before. So one of the infrastructure we get is also, equipment we get is also meters. And then we meter the households. It's a win-win situation because now the households can get 24 hours of energy. We can get paid. We can pay Kaduna Disco, which before they were not being paid, it was a loss for them. So it's like a franchising method that actually will help improve everything. So like I shared earlier for somebody, there are a lot of references and further reading that you can actually leverage on and go on to. I am very, very happy that we have some 20 minutes to spare and look at some of the questions before I have to give you freedom. I hope I have, as we'll say in church, ministered to somebody today. If I have ministered to you, give me a thumbs up. Sure, but let's look at the questions.
I'm doing it from here.
Thank you. The thumbs ups are so many.
Yeah, I don't know if yes.
Thank you guys. This is so
really
heartwarming.
Really loaded. Thank you so much, everybody. I collected, I was able to get some of the questions as you were speaking.
Awesome.
So let me just go over some of the questions. I just send them to you. And I think that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, but guys, you agree with me that today's class really was worth it. A lot of information that you would have missed out from if you're not in class today, you know, and that's why we always advise that if you can attend the two classes, I mean, it doesn't hurt, you know, it's just it stands to reinforce you know, the knowledge that you will be getting, you know. We'll be doing this again on Thursday for the current course, Global Energy and Climate Policy, you know, and, you know, today has really been really enriching. So let me see if I have...
Okay, so let's answer a few of the questions. And okay. I will answer, like, one of the things I'm seeing is if we all succeed, I can try to do 10. And if there's still time, I'll do more. But if not, you send me the remaining questions. So I'll be going through the question and answer of the link, right? So yes, if we all succeed in adopting clean energy, I wonder if those petrol and other sources of fuel become more and more accumulated in the oceans and will cause a huge disaster in the long run. I remember this question makes me remember my days working with ERA, Environmental Rights Action, Friends of the Earth. And they said one of their slogans is, leave the oil in the soil, because our extraction is even what is causing the problem. This oil is way below the surface of the earth and does not harm anybody where it is. That's where God or whoever created the world has made it to be. So why are you going there to extract it? It is the process of extraction that actually causes the pollution. So if you see, most of the pollutions that we see, like all the fish dying in the Niger Delta of Nigeria, is when the oil spills. It is not when the oil is underground. When the oil was underground, they were fishing the best fishes. They were getting the best kind of land situation. They could farm well. They could, like a lot of things were happening. And when we started extracting oil by force from the soil, we in the process of bringing it out, we spill some, we soil some. It's going into the fields and I mean, if you go to some of those communities, you will cry. Definitely, people cannot even drink their waters from their stream anymore. So. Don't worry. They are not threatened in any way. In fact, it is better for us if they are there so that they remain. And one of the things that is even being said and this is also questionable, is that the oil is even depleting. In another few years, the oil, whatever oil we think we have, oil reserves we have, will be finished. So it's a good time to start looking for alternatives like renewables, right? So then another question from Ndinda is, do you recommend support for commercial forestry? I do. I personally do. Why do I do that? When you say commercial forestry, it's not just going to forest areas. It's a foresting with the right kind of trees. So why would we not do commercially viable trees? Plant cocoa, plant fruits, mangoes, oranges, like things that when you harvest, you can actually use it to make money, right? So, and then nobody will want to come down and cut your mango trees on your this thing. So, because in the long run, you will sue the person, and you as a business, you are making money from the fruits that come out of that tree. So yes, I really encourage commercial forestation, because it is helping us sequester the carbon, and at the same time you're actually making money from the fruits that come out of the tree. Now that cows, okay, Caroline, we answered this already. The question I want to ask is about climate change policy. I think we shared a lot of policies, and from this further reading, you can get more. Somebody said to shed some light on the Montreal Protocol, that you will have to read. I will look for a link and share up with you so you can actually read it up yourself. Because I really want to get across to a lot of the questions. As much as solar panels are sustainable, how much is the impact on the climate in the manufacturing of them? And this is also another case that has actually caused a lot of debate across in a long time. The process of getting to the point where we have the solar panels is not as much emissions as, when you put it like on a par level, the value of getting them far outweighs the minimal emission that comes out of manufacturing them. Do you understand? So if you have a solar panel that maybe while getting, let's say, a 540 watt panel, what you use in emission might be, let's say, 10 kilograms of emissions. But that panel, when you put it on a roof, can save 1,000 tons of CO2 out there. So it's like when I said about improved cook stoves, that you can save 80% and still use a bill of 80%, right? So do we want to keep living because we do not want to manufacture them and create a problem? Or do we want to at least manage the small problem it will create for a greater good? That's what we call collateral damage, right? Sorry about that. In as much as solar energy is considered, it can work without batteries for energy storage, and these batteries it can work without batteries. And these batteries are produced from mining and processes that produce a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere. Okay, so this is kind of related. This is from Sani Mohammed Sambo. This is kindly related, and I think what he wanted to say there is that it can't work without batteries. But I can also assure you that it can work without batteries. There's a possibility to do a DC system that's direct use, right? But yes, you're right. The batteries are also, the process of manufacturing batteries also has its own level of emissions, which is like the last question that I answered. Do you want to, for the fear of emitting 5%, allow 100% to be emitted? So we need to really check and see if we can put our priorities right. So I am of the opinion that the little that is coming out of the manufacturing process is too little for us to lose the whole global good of getting this much emissions saved, right? So I look at this question like a question people normally ask just to frustrate the effort, sort of, because they try to see that there's a barrier to it. I like to look at the value to it much more than I look at the barrier to it. So there's no paradox there, if you ask me. It's just an understanding of the bottom line. And then another thing that will come up, which always comes up, is, okay, the disposal of the batteries causes environmental damage. Yes, but now there are sustainable disposal options, so you don't have to dispose inefficiently anymore. Thank you for your question, Sani. Francois Semana, why African countries not take care of climate change? Only they based on donation. In my country, we'll say, if you ask me, now who I go ask? But anyway, you're really, really correct. And one of the things that as an acumen fellow and a persistent fellow, one of the things we always are clamoring for is how do we make Africa non-dependent? And you know we can do it. Unfortunately, we have grown up to think that, oh, these people have money they are bringing from, but what they take from us is much more than what they bring for us. And we can do it. If we could all just put our heads together and realize that the boundaries between the African countries are just fictionary boundaries, right? They are not really boundaries. We're brothers and sisters. There's nothing, nobody is better than the other. We just need to find a way to join our heads together, find the strength that Niger has, that Nigeria can use, and then Ghana can tap from. And then we all come together and make sure that if I have to borrow money, I can borrow as Nigeria, I can borrow from South Africa because I know that that's my brother. If South Africa has to borrow money, they can borrow from Niger because they know that their brother has money. If all of us can harness the same resources that China and Netherlands, everybody is running in here to tap out of here, we are the owners of it. We do not need their money to harness it. But no, we are used to free, and that free is a lot of cost to us. This is my private opinion. Don't quote me anywhere. Anonymous attendee, where is attendance sheet? Okay, that's for sure about them. You said Africa will be one to suffer during the effects of climate change. Is it because we are from the global south? The thing is, currently, our adaptation structures are not there. Something happened in Nigeria recently. A doctor fell from a lift. A lift fell with a lady doctor inside it in a hospital. And that girl died 2 hours or so later because there was no blood in the hospital. There was no, in a hospital, a government-owned hospital, there was no blood, there was no oxygen. Like every part of the infrastructure that should have kept that girl alive was not available. That is what we mean when we say Africa will suffer most. The infrastructure, imagine a huge flood happens. I'm sure in the global north, what they can do is they have machines that can extract the water back and build the people's capacity back, and all of that infrastructure is in place, right? But if Nigeria floods now, you will flood and die and wait. Nobody's going to help you. So that's why we say that Africans will suffer more. Really, it's not really like we are in any way better. They're in any way better than us or so. Is there a means to calculate the amount of emissions? Yes, there are means of calculating. There are, for example, the Berkeley Air Monitoring Group, for example, has a technology they can apply to a certain cook stove or anything, and it can actually measure use. And just like you have for cook stoves to measure use, there are technologies, A2EI, it's Access to Energy Initiative, is an NGO in Germany. There was something they did a baseline study earlier, and for every generator in Nigeria, they were able to place a certain device. My team helps them to do that work, that's why I know. And they placed a certain device that they could, from where they were in Germany, read the use of those generators and actually be fuel is being used. And since we know already that a gallon of petrol causes 2.7 kilograms of emissions, it's easy then to calculate, right? Yeah, so that's I think an easy one. Francois is back again. Electricity is good, but forgetting it's really have negative impact on climate change. How do you link this? Not all electricity gives a huge impact on climate change. And that's why we're promoting that people should use more of renewable energies, because renewable energies gives off the minimal of emissions into the climate. And Adioye Adenike said she would like to answer this question. Do you want to go ahead and add more to what I've said?
So no, just
all right.
Keep going, please. Yeah, keep going.
Why techno come on? Okay. Why the focus on individual contribution to climate change instead of those that contribute on industrial scale? It's across board. There's no limitations. And that's why if you notice when I was talking, I talked about estates, I talked about companies, and I talked about households. So it's not an individual thing. It's a global thing. Yeah. Affordability is a huge issue. Even if we had customers for solar systems, it could be difficult for us to afford. Hey, don't keep living in the affordability world, though. I stepped out this morning and all I could see was almost all the estates around my area have roofs of solar. So don't be stuck in affordability, because a lot of innovative financing mechanisms have come on, Gideon. I don't know where you're from, but in Nigeria, for sure, we have companies like, so say my company, Energy. A lot of companies are giving solutions that you can pay across time. So I use this analysis for my customers a lot of times. I said, well, you buy generator fuel, let's say once every day, and maybe it costs you 10,000 naira per week. If you can gather that 10,000 naira per week, that's 40,000 naira per month. A 1.2 kilowatt solution. If you can pay me 40,000 naira per month, you'll be done paying in 24 months, 36 months, depending on the solution that's created for you. So affordability is no longer an issue. It is the willingness to do it. Is it possible to develop without any polluting? It is. Not any, but a huge reduction in polluting. So I won't promote that, yes, it's without at all, but there will be, but it won't be as much as we currently have done. Renewable energy is costlier, but can we actually get the initiative to train people on how to manufacture these appliances? Yes, we can, but then there are other, it's just like I said earlier about the infrastructure being in place. You know, for in Nigeria, for example, if you want to set up a manufacturing plant for solar panels, which a lot of people, I mean, we have assemblers and it's working, but the manufacturing from source, I mean, from scratch, is everything in place? That's the question. So there are possibilities to do things. After all, where they are being manufactured, it's not as if they were not manufactured, they were manufactured. So what are they doing to manufacture it? How can we bring it in? Recently, I was reached out to by the Dutch embassy. They have a battery manufacturing company that's from the Netherlands and wants to come and set up manufacturing plants in Nigeria. So they were asking questions, and because I was one of the founders of the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Alliance. They reached out to me to see if there were companies they could actually partner with to get that started. So there's a possibility to do that. I think corruption and tenderpreneurship is also among the bigger. I agree with you totally. In fact, in Africa, one of our biggest problems, Michael, is corruption. And yeah, you will not know the depth of it until you have to get into doing business in this continent. I don't know what you mean by should be electrical energy, and you're anonymous. Okay. Somebody wants attendance lists, and there's a lot of bureaucracy, and this discourages innovation. Exactly. But then I like to use this statement that when Martin Luther King was fighting for the freedom of the Blacks in America, he did not back out because there were discouragements. He went fighting. So if we want to see change, we do not allow discouragement push us back. We pull through. So let's not give up. If you're paying attention to the people who are going to copy your innovation, you will never innovate, right? I mean, if you're innovating and you're a good innovator anyway, and you're confident in what you're innovating, you should be proud that somebody is even looking to steal your innovation. And so I think, and if you're proud of it, you know that it's going to solve a problem. Only you cannot produce, Africa-wide, can produce what will satisfy everybody. So yes, but fortunately, again, there is patenting, there's trademarking. So if you already know it, do it. But then we kept shouting patenting and trademarking, and somebody discovered solar panels. Now there are hundreds of thousands of companies manufacturing solar panels. Are we going to stop because my neighbor is now a solar panel installer? No. I will learn to do it in a better way that will be appealing to my customer, so that I can continue the fight against because the enemy is not my neighbor, the enemy is energy poverty. So look at the global good and fight for that. Shadrach, please could you elaborate on the carbon market and trading in Nigeria? How do you see that evolving in Africa, given that most countries in Africa do not yet have a carbon? There are existing ones, and if you're a Nigerian, go to Eco Carbon Initiative. Yeah, I think so. Eco Carbon Initiative. And there's a lot in place. If you reach out to me later, I can send you links and advices on how you can actually find them. We do have a carbon market in Africa that's already being born. I'm very impressed by it because a long time ago when I started my work, we didn't have anything. If we wanted verifiers, we had to get them from Europe. Now you can get verifiers even in Nigeria. How is energy generated from biomass? In a lot of ways. Using firewood is generating energy from biomass. Gathering leaves and storing them in a certain way that will allow them deteriorate, and you have a way to sustainably get the gas that comes out of it and you can use it to power your gas, your gas cooker and all of that. There's a lot of ways that you can use to generate energy from biomass. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but if I've not, you can send me an email and be a bit more specific. Michael Adiado, what do you think is the potential of nuclear energy in Africa? I'm not a fan of nuclear energy, so I don't think I'm the right person to answer this question. All I think of when I hear nuclear energy is Hiroshima and how much damage it costs. So please don't ask me about nuclear energy. I don't like it. I think we should run from it. Okay. So I think I'll stop here because I can see that I have only, we're out of time. So if I haven't answered your question, please kindly feel free to send it as an email, and we can do this again on Thursday. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Today was fire. Thank you very much. Let's keep jamming those hands. Let's keep jamming those hands. Thank you very much, Abiba. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I saw a question that's I'd love you to just drop a line on. So the question goes like this: how do we bring in the younger generation into green economy? I think the question was asked.
Can I just use this opportunity to ask you? Can I also use this opportunity to ask you, what's the age range of the participants?
Okay.
Do you have an age range?
Well, I should say largely from 18 and above. So we have.
Okay, so guys, this is it. This is what we're doing. This is bringing you in. This is bringing the youth in. Because if we do not do programs like this, we do not address, create platforms like this. I mean, I saw at the point the attendance went up to 200 people. Imagine that next month, we do another 200 people. And another time, we bring another 200 people. We're educating more people. We're getting more people to understand. And thank God for COVID. If COVID didn't give us anything, it gave us access to know that webinars and virtual things can actually happen. And so we can keep promoting these access to a wider audience. We can keep doing this. As you learned of this today, you also in your little space where you have, when you get the slides, I'm sure Hasey will not have a problem with it. If you gather your village people and you do a little bit of presentation to them, sharing this, relating it to your community. And if you have problems, you can actually reach out to the people and say, oh, this is how I'm having issues and all of that. I think we all have a mandate to make this happen, and we can do it.
All right. Thank you very much for that response. So we've come to the end, or we're getting to the end of today's class. Thank you very much again to our facilitator, Abiba Lee. Please kindly follow her on our social media. I'll be dropping that on the group, so that we can further ask our questions and consult with her. Yesterday we asked that you filled out a baseline survey, and I further explained that we'll be taking that survey, of course, to be able to assess the level of your knowledge and then also take account of your expectations for the program, and also see that we work towards being on track with respect to your knowledge of the climate policies and all that Nigeria is doing and your countries are doing, and of course helping Nigeria to, helping Africa to reach to contribute its quota to the net zero, target. Thank you once again, everyone, for being a part of today's class. Again, for the core 2, your class is on Thursday. We are going to be again having our facilitator facilitate that session for Thursday. And everyone that has attended today's class, you are invited to join us for the Thursday's class to reinforce the knowledge that you've gotten. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of today's class. We wish you the very best of the day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and be blessed. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye. Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for being
Yeah,
on the call. How was
you're
this
welcome.
class?
Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, it went well. It went well.
Alright,
Yep,
take care.
yep, yep. I think Bamdele is on the call now.